No matter how much we acknowledge it or not, it's definitely going on right now in terms of everyone's relationship with mental health is being tested in a way, and stress as well. And one correction I do have to make, Nathan, is I'm not a counseling psychologist yet. I will be a marriage and family therapist in a few months. So if everything pans out correctly, I'll be a therapist within half a year actually. So I'm still a student, and I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit about where I am in the process. And I understand this is the Expert Sciences Club. And a part of that, if I understand correctly, is to give you a glimpse into my profession. Is that right, Nathan?
Yeah.
Okay, in that case, I have come prepared with the right material. Okay, but before I go into what my day-to-day looks like, I want to do a quick introduction of myself. My name is Vincent. My last name is Ngo. Yes, that is a Vietnamese last name. I'm Vietnamese American. My pronouns are he, him. And right now, I'm a full-time marriage and family therapist student. And in about a few months, I'll be a family therapist intern. And that means I'll be actually practicing and not just looking at textbooks all day. And I'll also be talking about my part-time position as a coordinator for the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And hopefully my goal today is to give you a little glimpse of a few different mental health professions, because mental health as a profession, it's so broad. We can become a therapist. One can become a therapist. One can become a coordinator. One can become a case manager. All of them are a little bit different. Today, I'll give you a glimpse of what it looks like to be, to be, um, to work in the mental health nonprofit field, as well as what it looks like to be a marriage family student, as well as perhaps a little glimpse into what it looks like to be a therapist, because I have some experience in that. And today we'll be taking a glimpse into my occupation. We will also be talking about teen mental health, and particularly what's going on in the pandemic times. And we'll close with managing mental health and stress, and some question and answers at the end. Let me double check to make sure I'm doing okay on time. Okay. So right now on the left-hand side, you can see I am in a counseling psychology program right now. So that means I'm learning how to become a marriage and family therapist. And I know marriage and family therapists might make it sound like I'll be working particularly with couples with relationship issues or with families. However, I want to iterate that marriage and family therapist, that is just the umbrella term for any therapist in California. Most therapists in California have an MFT, marriage and family therapist license, but we don't only work with relationships and with families. Pretty much anything that therapists, any I guess in any circumstance that therapists could work, MFTs are allowed to do that. So as a marriage and family therapist, in a few months, this is what I would be doing. I would be counseling clients, and that could look like one-on-one. For example, like say Nathan's having a really tough time and he needs someone to talk to. I can talk to Nathan one-on-one and see what's going on and see how I can help him navigate like what's going on. Perhaps it's pandemic stress, perhaps it's family stress, perhaps it's something else. There's so many things that can make stress arise and make mental health deteriorate. So within this profession, we are invited to help people kind of walk aside them as people figure out, as our client figure out what's going on inside of me and what can I do about it so I can live a more meaningful, fulfilling, and peaceful life. So one-on-one is one of the contexts in which you work. A second one, couples, whether it be married couples, whether it be not married couples, whether it be um, heterosexual couples, um, or just any type of couples, and not even just with couples too, poly, with romantic relationships with more than two people, just all types of different forms and shapes. Families, we do work with families, especially if we work with kids, because one of the big things about working with kids is we need to get the family on board. So family is a big one, and groups. Sometimes therapists runs groups, one of the great thing about running groups is that we can get people from similar backgrounds and experiences to kind of share their experience in a way that their other group members could relate to. For example, one popular one is Alcoholic Anonymous. Like, say, people who are struggling with substance abuse come together and navigate the recovery journey together. And another thing would be, let's say, I guess pertinent to this population, teen groups. Teens can come together and to talk about whatever they're struggling with and give support to each other. And if anything, there's something very special about working with groups that we can't get working one-on-one. So if I can sum it up in a nutshell, being a therapist means working with people and walking alongside them, whether it be one-on-one groups, couples, walking aside them on that healing journey and understanding, hey, what's going on with you? What's going on inside of you? And what are the things that's so painful for you right now? Understanding that, and also helping them navigate that in a way so they can find ways to cope with whatever's going on and find ways to create a life that is more meaningful, more peaceful, and more in alignment with what they really want. And then I'm going to ask you to bring your attention to the right side of the screen. It says mental health advocacy. So right now I work for a nonprofit called NAMI. They stand for National Alliance of Mental Illness. And what we do at NAMI is we do a lot of advocacy. And advocacy means it's pretty much making sure that the community knows that mental health is important, and making sure that they know there's resources out there, and making sure that in terms of our community we have everything we need to have better mental wellness, whether that be advocating for certain laws to be passed, or whether it's advocating on just a community level. One of the things I do right now is I'm a part of this team called Faith Net. And what we do is we go to faith communities to talk about mental health, and we do mental health workshops. And that is the first bullet here, psychoeducation for communities. And we also consult with some communities to see what's going on with your community. For example, I was working with St. Lucie Parish. I think they are a Catholic parish in San Jose. And through my work with them, through our work with them, we were able to create a mental health ministry. So before this advocacy work, say in 2020, there was only one Catholic, out of all of the Catholic parishes, there's only one mental health ministry. Now in 2021, there's 8. So that is the fruits of the advocacy work. And some of these faith communities are starting to realize how important mental health is and starting to advocate for it themselves. So I see my role as going around planting little seeds. That's what advocacy is, planting seeds for great things to come in terms of mental health awareness. So speaking of psychoeducation for communities, I thought that, I could just talk about my work, or better yet, I want to show you my work. So here's what I'm going to do. I have a few slides of the mental health 101 workshops that I usually facilitate for the communities that I engage with. So first things first, I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health. So the question I have at hand is, what is mental health? First off, I want to acknowledge that mental health is something that everyone has. And an analogy I would like to use is, for example, let's say it's like physical health. We all have physical health. At any given moment, Nathan has a blood pressure. I have a blood pressure. At any given moment, we have a sugar level, and that's all indicative of health. However, not everyone has a physical illness. For example, my blood pressure is probably like 180 over, I'm sorry, no, not 180. That's really bad. 120 over 80. I know y'all may be too young to like check your blood pressure regularly, but mine is like where it's in the healthy range. However, just maybe around a year ago, I got into this accident that just completely spiked up my blood pressure. And it was maybe like around like 140 over 90, which means it's hypertension. So this analogy is to show at any given moment, I have a blood pressure, which means I have physical health. However, depending on what's going on with me at any given circumstance, I could be healthy, physically healthy, or I can be physically ill. And that's the same with mental health. We all have mental health, but not all of us have a mental illness. And what mental health includes is it includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And then let me see on the right side. So mental health, it pretty much affects so many different things and aspects of life. It also affects physical health as well, that I just mentioned earlier. It affects our daily life. It affects our relationships with others, our relationship with ourselves. It affects how we cope and how we practice faith as well. So this is keep in mind, this is the presentation I do for the faith community. So that's why faith is in there. And this is one of the slides I really enjoy. This is the mental health spectrum. And this, what I like about this spectrum is number one, colors. I love colors. And this goes to show mental health is not black and white. It's not, yes, I'm healthy, or no, or no, I'm not healthy. There's a spectrum. And at any given moment, we can be anywhere on the spectrum. We could be healthy, we could be coping, we could be struggling, or we can be unwell. And depending on where we are, we have to treat ourselves a bit differently. And that is another, I know, another way of meeting ourselves where we're at. And that's a huge concept that I believe in, meeting ourselves where we're at and understanding where we are. So say, let's start from the left, we'll go all the way to the right. Green is healthy. When say like when I'm healthy, when I'm relatively healthy, things are okay. Like I can feel like okay most of the time. Even when I'm healthy, I don't feel happy all of the time because simply that's just not how life is. But when I'm healthy, I'm able to do the things that are important to me. I'm able to brush my teeth, I'm able to shower, I'm able to go to school, I'm able to meet with my clients, I'm able to go to my church, I'm able to do the things that I want to do in a way that's okay. That's not too difficult. However, as we all know, life is stressful sometimes, and particularly now, I think life is very stressful right now. If a stressor were to come, it can easily knock us down into yellow, where we have to cope with whatever stressor there is. And depending on how we cope, we can either go back to green or we can go further down to struggling. Let's say let's see, I get really bad grades and I get kicked out of my program right now. That's very stressful. And depending on how I cope with that, let's say I get my own therapist, I eat well, I sleep on time, and I just do everything that I can, utilize my support, cope in the healthy ways. It's my chances of going back to green are a lot better. However, let's say I don't do any of those things and I resort to drinking. I resort to just maybe even more than drinking, doing pills, coping in that way, and I don't know, staying up all night playing video games. That increases without the social support. It's very likely that I would go down to struggling, where struggling means everything that I found so easy to do when I was in the green, it's hard for me to now. It's hard for me to get up in the morning. It's hard for me to brush my teeth, to make myself food, to go to school, to go to work. And it's struggle. It's a struggle. And unfortunately, if people were to stay in a struggling for too long without the right type of support, we can go to red, unwell. And that is where mental health, it starts to deteriorate, not start to, but it deteriorates very, very drastically. And the chances of developing a mental illness is highest when we're in the red zone. So these are just some mental illnesses that are potentially that people can potentially get. So one thing I have to notice, sometimes we're born with mental illnesses. For example, autism spectrum disorder, something people are born with, can't do anything about that. And then there's other illnesses that we can develop. And there's so many different types. I'm not going to go into this because I would be here for an hour, and I know there's a lot of other great speakers that need your time too. So I'm just going to go over quickly some mental distress warning signs. Now, by no means is this meant to diagnose anyone here. These are just some patterns that can appear once we go further away from the green to the yellow, to the orange, to the red. And take a look at some of these. I'm not going to read them all out, but if these appear, just notice that some of these things appearing now and then are normal, because just things happen in life. However, if they appear and they stay for a very, very long time and is getting in a way to just function day to day, that's when it's probably a good time to see if we can get some help. Quickly, some numbers. You're not alone. 1 in 5 people suffer from a mental health condition. And these are some other statistics down here. I'm going to speed up just a bit because I know we're running out of time. So one of the things that I did research on before this symposium was to figure out, hey, I know in the pandemic times, mental health, it's definitely a very relevant topic. And because of pandemic times, there's so many important things that teenagers need to do that it's difficult. The pandemic's making it very difficult for them to do. Um, and I'll go into that the next slide. But right now, I just want to talk about some numbers real quick. So this is some numbers I found from a study right now. So in a survey of, I think it was over 1,500 teens, 7 out of 10 reported struggling with mental health in some way. 50% struggle with anxiety, 43 struggle with depression, 45 felt that they have more stress than usual, and 61 reported to feel lonelier. And, looking at these numbers, it's kind of daunting for me to see. However, I'm not surprised because this pandemic has put so much, I guess, unique and unprecedented stress onto teens, and it's made the things that teens need to do so much harder to do. For example, to socialize. And actually, I'm gonna stay here just a bit longer. And I think we know how important it is for teenagers to be connected, to be independent, to feel connected to one another, to go into the extracurriculars, to not spend 8+ hours on a computer screen. There's just so many things that are kind of like forced upon the teens during this pandemic. And however, there is hope. Around like 80 or 90% of people who seek help for these issues from professional, mental health professional, will improve. So although these numbers look scary, just know that there is a lot of hope. And some tips I can share just right off the bat that would increase the likelihood of us of teens managing mental health and stress in a way that's more healthy is number one is to get the basics down. Food, exercise, and sleep is so important. And I'll emphasize on sleep. Make sure that you're sleeping on a regular schedule. Food is super important too. At the end of the day, we are what we eat. Making sure we have the basics down gives us a really good fighting chance at making sure that our mental health and the stress are that we give our body what it needs to recover from the stress and from any mental health distress. Number two is to take a break from the screen and go outside. Now, I know that's super hard. I myself as a student, sometimes we have to be on the screen for 6, 7, 8+ hours. And that's a lot. And I don't think humans are designed to be on the computer for that long. So it's very important to go outside. One of the things that we need from the outside world is sunlight. We need sunlight because we get vitamin D from sunlight, and we know that people who don't get enough vitamin D are a lot more vulnerable to depression. So take a break from the screen and go outside. Three is separate your sleeping space from your working space if possible. Now, there's environmental psychology into play here that our brain sometimes associates places to things. So if we work where we sleep, our brain might get confused, and that could impact our mental health as well. Four, if anything, four is very important, especially for this demographic, teens. Find creative ways to connect with your friends. And there's just something that connecting with friends through a screen that it doesn't fully capture the human experience in my eyes. So what I would recommend is if you could coordinate something as simple as a socially distanced not gathering, a socially distanced hangout with just one or two friends, perhaps was to walk down a park, have a picnic, something like that. That would help a lot. Because I do know that the one of the biggest one of the things that hurt the most for teens is being socially isolated. Now, I highly recommend just finding creative ways to connect to your friends. Five is getting professional help sooner or later. I'm sorry, not sooner or later, sooner than later if you find yourself feeling overwhelmed. And statistically speaking, people get help for mental health issues 8 to 9 years after their first symptom has appeared. And that's way too long. For some reason, people, when it comes to mental health, it takes a while for people to seek professional help. However, I have no doubt that if I were to say, hey, would you prefer to get help let's talk about, say, something more physical like cancer. And someone has cancer and it comes in stages, stage 1, 2, 3, or 4, I have no doubt that if everyone had the choice, they would get treatment, get treated when you're at stage 1, because stage 4 is it's late. It's very late. And there's some damage that is just, it's going to take a lot of time to undo. And in terms of mental health, I would suggest, hey, get professional help if you find yourself struggling sooner than later. And let's say if you're not really sure whether or not that would be beneficial, if you go anyway and it turns out that, hey, maybe you don't need it, no worries. You just maybe waste an hour or so of your time. So one of the things I would recommend is reaching out to your pediatrician if you feel overwhelmed, or the school counselor. Every school has a counselor and they're there for a reason. Utilize them. If anything, I think this is going to be in the next slide. So this is the question and answers. And I think we have a little bit under 10 minutes. And I want to give this space to the community. Let's see some of the questions that you have for me. And let's see if we can open up a dialogue. So let's see.
Actually, Vincent, I had a couple of questions while people are
Okay.
writing down their other questions. In your opinion, since you've been training for so long about, therapy and things like that, why do you think it's so hard to get medical coverage of mental illnesses? And what are some ways that the community, what are some things that the community can do to spread awareness of all of these issues that are revolving around teenagers and the stress of teenagers and things like that?
Yeah. Nathan, you asked a really great question. Let me make sure I'm understanding correctly. I think I heard maybe two themes. Number one is, why is it so difficult for people to access mental health services? And then the other thing would be advocacy. How can we alleviate some of these barriers? Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to make this as simple as possible, because it's kind of a complicated issue, because it's just systemically, right? We live in a healthcare system in which most people, the truth is, mental health care is available. However, availability and accessibility is not the same thing. Because I'll be honest, like if someone looks for a therapist, it private pay, it could cost a lot. Like it could cost like $100 something per hour. So most people would go to their health insurance to get mental health care. So I think one of the things is understanding the limitations within the system, the healthcare system. Is one is pretty damn expensive. Two is that in order to access it, we need to go into either have the financial means or have insurance. And even with insurance, depending, some insurances won't take care of clients if they're not severe enough. And I think that does a huge disservice to the community. However, I know there's a lot of nonprofit organizations that offer low fee counseling. So there is solutions to this. However, I think it's just difficult how our healthcare system is set up. That's one thing. The second thing too, and I think this is where we can do something about it as a community, is a stigma behind getting access. And I know as a person of color, there is, or just in general in America, there is a stigma behind mental health too. And forgive me if this is offensive, but what I do what I do see and hear is people thinking like, hey, someone, you see a therapist, there's something wrong with you. There's something like you're crazy. These things, as inaccurate as they are and as harmful as they are, there are still a narrative in our society. And I think we're slowly getting into the right direction though. So to sum it up in a nutshell, I think stigma is a huge barrier that prevents people from getting the care they need. And the second thing is, like, the healthcare system makes it difficult too. Yes, let's go ahead. And I know there's some questions. Let's see. Can you talk about telltale signs in teens as a parent that we can watch for to see if your child is struggling with mental health issues? So I think one of the every child is going to be unique. Every child is unique. And as parents, I think you know how your child is. One of the things I would say is, if something were to change drastically, like if your child is not, they're not functioning in a way that they used to, in terms of they're not function well, first thing, if they're not functioning well, for example, if their sleep one of the things is if their sleep is getting off balance, if their mood is is more turbulent, and if anything, I think one of the best things to do is to talk to your child, because if you were to catch something different, just talk to your child, and and see if you need to get your child to see their pediatrician as well. Okay, and then second question is to is related to that too. And here I'm gonna go back a few slides, because I think some of the slides here, this slide right here, feeling anxious or worried, feeling depressed or unhappy, emotional outbursts, quiet or withdrawn, weight or appetite changes, sleep problems, and then the three below. Some of these signs, pay attention to some of these signs, but most importantly, making sure that the lines of communication is there. Let's see. Playing off of one of the previous questions. Okay, I hope this is not too political. I think everything is political, so let's go in. But as someone in the field, do you think some form of universal healthcare being implemented would increase overall accessibility? I think so, because one of the things I mentioned earlier, availability and accessibility are not the same. We do have a lot of mental health services available. However, it's just not accessible because of a lot of things. One of the things being financial. So if we have a universal healthcare, I think, well, for example, Medicare, I know a lot of my friends are working with clients who they only can afford therapy because they have Medi-Cal. And so, yes, I think so. What are some methods we can use to help someone we know with a mental illness? Okay, one of the tips, and I think this might be the last question because we're running out of time, and I want to respect the time boundary. But one of the biggest things that I think people generally do wrong is that when someone's struggling, people go in and people try to fix the problem. And I think, and I guess in American culture, we're very fix orientated. We're very action oriented. We want to fix the issue. However, when someone's going through a hard time, they don't need you to fix their problem. They need you to be there. They need you to understand what's going on. And they just simply want you to be there and to listen. And I think a lot of people have like a knee-jerk reaction to fix when they hear of a problem. But if we go into the fixing mode and mindset too quickly, or even at all, it really doesn't give the person who's struggling what they need. And at the end of the day, what if someone's going through a mental health crisis, or going through a mental health distress, or going through a hard time? They need to feel seen, they need to feel heard, and they need to know that they're validated, that what they're going through makes sense to you. So rather than saying, hey, like we could do this, A, B, and C, have you tried this? Have you tried that? I would say, rather than going into the fixing mode, something you can simply do is like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know what to say. I'm so glad you shared that with me. That must be so tough right now. That would be so much better than trying to fix their issue. And just really slowing down, being with them and listening to them. And if they're ready to seek help, maybe even offering, hey, can I drive you? If you have your license. If not, it's like, hey, can I walk you to the counseling office? Like, can I be with you? So that's the tip I would say in terms of um, in terms of advocacy. Oh, I have a quick question. Is there a big difference between junk food and healthy food to mental health? Yes, 100%. Yes, 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 yes. Also exercise. Yes, exercise is great. Yeah. Okay, actually, I think we are at the time boundary. Nathan, how shall we proceed?
Actually, Vincent, we can answer the last question by
Okay.
Nicole.
Okay, let's see. The last question. Do you have advice for being in a romantic relationship with someone struggling with depression? If their mental health is harming the relationship, should we break up with them? Oh, that is a loaded question. And I think that is a really relevant question. Um, let's see. At the end of the day, I want to make sure I formulate this before I speak. Let me go ahead and take a sip. Oh man, that is a big one. That is a big one to answer, and I can't answer 100% because I know that every relationship is unique. However, what I can say is no matter what your partner is going through, you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself. And I'm not sure, yeah, this is a tricky thing to navigate, but definitely one tip I could give is understand like, hey, like you need to put yourself first and take care of yourself and to put down boundaries to understand what is your responsibility, and your responsibility is not their depression. That is their responsibility. Doesn't mean you cannot be there for them, but understanding the boundaries, where you can go, where you will not go, how much you can give and how much you need for yourself. So understand like when helping another person with their recovery journey, one of the most useful things is for you yourself to be 100%, maybe 100% too much, but to be grounded and not to give what you cannot give. So I cannot answer like all the detail because I don't know the context. And yeah, I'll leave that there.
Thank you so much, Vincent.
Mhm.
Um, Now we're going to actually move on to Dr. Takkar, who is a child psychiatrist, and she's going to speak about students and their stress that they're dealing with on a more medical perspective, from a more medical perspective.
Thank you very much. I would like to share my screen if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I heard some of the Winston's talk and I thought it was really nice. And thank you, Nathan, to put out such an interesting and a strong topic that is required. My name is Dr. Thakkar and I am a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I have been a medical director at Bay Area Clinical Associates and I do my private practice at Comprehensive Psychiatric Clinic. Little bit on my background, I was born and brought up in India and moved here after I finished my psychiatry residency from India and came here and did my residency in UCLA and then went to for fellowship to USC. After finishing things in Southern California, I moved to Northern California. First and foremost, thank you all of you for taking time to be here and making sure that making sure that you're spending your evening with us, with me, and working through the things that we need to. I am going to try to figure out how to get the slideshows. It's awesome. For the disclaimer, whatever we are going to be talking about today, but as a disclaimer, this is basically for an informational purposes. Please, this is not a professional medical advice or any treatment or diagnosis. Don't try to diagnose whatever I talk about today, but please seek professional advice and do not delay in seeking a professional advice if something you've heard in this talk is very important for you. I'm struggling getting this going. So I know, welcome to the high school. The most important thing in high school is we have too many anxieties as we start high school. And I know that though these are the great 4 years of your life, there are a lot of things that you worry and you're learning and you're experiencing. We'll start with some questions, and I know you can't answer me, but if you guys can put it on the chat, I would be happy to see what's going on. What do you guys think about half of all mental illness begin before what age? I'm having struggle doing this. Okay. Half of mental illness begin before the age of 14, basically. And that is something that we have been seeing in our patients. And the kids under the age of 14 also experience stress, anxiety, depression, those type of illnesses. 3/4 of mental illness begin before the age of 24. Most of the illnesses that we diagnose are normally before the age of 24. Very rarely the diagnosis of some of these illnesses come after the age of 24. So kids in prime high school and early college life have a lot of struggles of having mental illness, and they do go through a lot of stress. What is an average delay before getting a treatment? Do you think there's going to be 1 to 2 years, or like Vincent just mentioned, if you have a cancer, we don't wait for we don't wait for treatment. However, the treatment for mental health delay is almost 8 to 10 years. A lot of people will not ask for mental health treatment for 8 to 10 years. And that is a very disturbing thing, because mental illness and mental health is very important part of our physical health. Your brain is not separate from your body, but we still wait to deal with our brain for 10 years. According to the data of CDC, how many in 2012, among the age of 5 to 24, the suicide was the leading cause of what number? It's basically a second leading cause of death in United States. And still, we don't take it very seriously. We take heart problems seriously. We take cancer seriously. And in fact, cancer is the third deadly disease, but suicide is the second deadly disease. How many suicidal patients in California emergency department are evaluated by psychiatrists? Truth is only 10%, because most of the people who really see patients who are suicidal are either family practitioners or primary care doctors or pediatricians. They don't go to psychiatrists for their suicidal thoughts, or psychologist or a therapist, basically because it's very hard to get access or even to go and take care of mental illness. What is stress? Stress is a state of mind of an emotional streams. And basically having a stress is a normal response. If you have a test coming up and you have some stress, it's a good thing, because stress will make you study and work through it. And it, in fact, it helps with the performance. There is a stress before a game. There is a stress before a test. It's a very important thing. It's a comfort zone that we have to have. What happens when this stress goes from the bell curve to the other side? And that is where the problem starts. When we don't deal with our stress, and when we don't deal with how to deal with our stresses, that leads to the problems, that leads to exhaustion, that leads to ill health, that leads to your breakdown, that leads to the mental health illnesses. And that's the reason why we need to balance our stress time and relaxing time. And that's a very hard thing to do as in high school, because as a teen, you have multiple stresses. You have stresses from your school, your friends, your parents. You're trying to overschedule yourself. You're trying to fit in. You're learning new experiences and your own expectations of how you really want to be with it. What are the causes of stress? Are all of these things lead to even body changes that you're feeling, negative thoughts you're feeling. There are a lot of stresses that goes through at this prime time in your life. And some of these changes can affect your stress level. Even a simple thing like moving a new school, maybe it was your choice of a school, but still it brings stress. Even having a party in your own house is a stress, even though it is something good that you plan to do. How does a stress cycle go? Mainly the problem with the stress cycle is the perception of an event. When you feel like you can't be under control, you start having a serious dialogue in your head. Sometimes they are very negative dialogue that why cannot I control? Because you can't control all the situations. And during that period of time, either you're going to learn to fight the situation or you're going to run away from the situation. And that is just normal brain things. And as you continue to fight or flight, as soon and steadily, you start making an automatic past programming of your things where you start believing that you can't fight it. And you just believe this negative thought about yourself. You can't handle the situation. When you feel like you are out of control, things start getting downhill. The stress becomes more and more difficult to handle. And you start having physical symptoms. Somebody had asked the questions, what type of things you can have when your kid is having problems. If your kid is starting to talk about a lot of aches and pains, because physical symptoms are very easy to say it, kids will start complaining about aches and pain, nausea, they cannot go to school, they are having issues with chest pain, they try to avoid and try to sleep more or eat more, or you find them being more in their own room. Those are some of the physical symptoms you start seeing. Because physical symptoms are something that parents and everybody take it very seriously. So they want to talk about physical symptoms. They're not going to come and say, I'm having stress. They're going to come and say, I'm having pains, or I'm having diarrhea, or I'm having nausea. They may have some cognitive problems. They will come and tell you, I have an inability to concentrate. I can't focus on things. I constantly worry about things. I can't remember things. Whatever my teacher is teaching me, I cannot remember those things. Those are also some of the signs of stress and mental illness. As the stress level is not settled, it leads to something called as anger and irritability. You may find that your child or or the teen is getting very angry for small things, and or they get upset even if you ask them to do a simple thing. They can get agitated. They are spending a lot of time on their video games and playing video games. They look very moody. One time they are happy, another time they are angry. And we all say this is, oh, he's just being a teenager or she's just being a teenager. And that's not really true. You need to really focus on some of the things. They start feeling sense of loneliness. They start isolating themselves. They start having, the more they isolate, the more this continues to happen. Slowly and steadily, it starts leading to general unhappiness. They don't find pleasure in anything. If your kid loved reading and stops reading, or loved playing games and stops playing games, those are some of the things you have to monitor and see what's going on. Monitoring and just saying, oh, he spends all his time in his room is not normal for a lot of people. You have to have monitoring and question what's going on. Even if they're doing very well in school, but they can still be stressed about everything that's going on. And sometimes this can lead to mental illness. Like Vincent said, more than 50% of the people experience anxiety. 1 in 5 kids have anxiety or depression. That means every other kid you see is having some depression or anxiety while they are in high school. And it's still something that none of us really talk much about, because we're talking about physical things, we talk about college expectations, but it's very important to talk about mental and emotional well-being. Suicide is something that starts happening when somebody's in a long stress relationship. They start feeling hopeless, they start feeling guilty, they start feeling worthless. And this is when it leads to the suicide, which is again, second important disease, second most common reason for death in young adolescents. And that is something that we need to monitor. How do teens manage stress? Teens are normally, they'll start having eating issues. Either they'll eat too much or they'll eat too less. They'll start refusing to go to school. They will miss out on classes. They'll miss out on assignments. Most of the kids will start spending more time on the screen. And this is the most common symptoms that we get. Oh, my child is addicted to the screen. He may or she may not be addicted to the screen. They are starting to deal with their stress level by being on screen. 20% of the people will talk about substance use. They will try to get to other things instead of talking and speaking about how they are feeling. And this is a very big number, because when a young brain is using substances, it does alter brain chemistry for a long period of time. Why? There was a big question of why doesn't the kids get help, or what is the reason of not getting help? The biggest question is stigma. And the stigma does not happen from just the society. It happens a lot. 46% of the adolescents feel stigma by their family members, because they don't want to be felt like they are crazy or they have any problems. They just want to deal with it. Like if everybody is dealing with it, why cannot I deal with it? What's wrong with me that I'm not able to deal with it? 62% feel stigma from their peers. And this would be something that where the advocacy comes down as a team, as a high schoolers, to talk to each other about your mental illness and how you are dealing with it. It's not something that it needs to be a secret. It is something that needs to be talked about. 35% of the people will talk about teachers and school staff leading to some stigma. Not that they are wanting to do it, but they assume sometimes that there is a lot of stigma going on those things. And sometimes there is a hard thing. Just because you have depression or anxiety is not going to affect your college admissions, is not going to affect your life. It's not going to affect your dreams. But but people just worry about it so much that if I'm going to talk about my depression, anxiety, people are not going to be able to accept me the way I am. As I always say, your call is very important. Don't make yourself irrelevant on those things. This is very important to understand. How do you manage stress? Focusing on your achievements is very important. Don't compare yourself with just others are doing. Sometimes it's important to you be your own cheerleader. Patting your own back is a very important thing. Making time to do pleasurable activities, trying to have positive affirmations, taking breaks from stressful situations, building a network of friends who can help you cope in a positive way, having friends who are also using drugs or substances to cope with their depression, anxiety is not something that's going to make you feel motivated to do other coping skills. Again, exercise, eating, and sleeping regularly is the number one thing which we all say. Most of the teens don't get to sleep. Most of the teens only sleep for 3 or 4 hours because they are working on their homework or other stuff. To get a normal sleep schedule for a teenager or a requirement is 9 hours. And if I tell this to my teenager patients, they laugh at me and they say, you don't know how much homework do I get from school. But it's not just the homework. There's also time management to think about. Avoid excessive caffeine intake because that can increase your agitation and anxiety. Avoid overscheduling, avoid illegal drugs. Find practical ways to cope and manage your time. Not talking about, oh, I'm going to be doing 5 different things and these things because I need to make sure I get into college admissions. That's not the way it's going to help. Figure out what are you passionate about and work on those passion things. How can you improve your teens' communication at home? No kids want to talk to their parents about how they are feeling. But it is important for parents as well as for kids to sit down together and have a scheduled time to talk about how things are going. When a child is coming to talk to you, make good eye contact. Make sure you are not rolling your eyes or you're not having any body language that they feel dismissed with. Stay focused on their conversation. If there are phones or eliminate any TV screens, that's why we talked about having dinners together without the screen on. Understand what they're trying to say, validate their feelings. Don't try to fix the situation as Vincent talked about. It is important to validate the feelings of the person. Show empathy. Talk about how and what you don't understand when they are talking to you about. Ask your team the permission if they want help. Sometimes they don't want your help. They just want to vent out and they just want to talk and they just want to tell you how they are feeling. They don't want you to fix the situation. They had a big fight with their best friend. They don't want you to go to the best friend's parents and talk about it or even try to fix the situation. They just want to talk about how they are feeling and how they are talking, processing their feelings right now. The more they talk, the more they process. The more they process, the more they understand and find solutions for themselves. And it's very important to get through those things. How can parents help? Most important thing is parents need to watch for signs of stress. When your child is refusing schools multiple times in a row, something is wrong. When there is a substance abuse involved, something is wrong. Make sure that you are not putting too much pressure. Check if you are overscheduling them for a lot of the things. Encourage them to spend time with you, exercise, and get more sleep. Talk about things where they don't always have to be productive. Also, find your ways to model your stress management. Please, please, please get professional help. If you don't know what to do, ask your pediatricians, ask your psychiatrist, ask your therapist. Just because you go to a therapist and a psychiatrist, they are not going to put medications or give medications and diagnose your child. We see so many times the kids and we just tell them that they need to just exercise and eat and learn how to cope with it. Not everybody is not diagnosed with depression if you just go to see a psychiatrist, or diagnosed with any disorders just because you see a psychiatrist. The goal is to just figure out how can they help each other. Not everybody gets medications. Medications are an important part of life. However, medications are not the solution for mental illness. We make sure that there are other coping skills that we use that is going to make you feel better. Contact your school counselors. School counselors and schools do a great job of helping kids with mental illness. It's important to talk to them. It's important to find solutions. And there are so many ways that they will be able to help you out. Takeaway points. Watch for the signs of the stress in your teen. Decrease stigma. Ask for help from the school. Seek professional help when appropriate. Be vigilant for your teens and their safety. Communication and stress management, yours as well as teens, is the best way to help help with the mental illnesses. These are some of the resources that is important to have as a parent, and they are somebody where you can go to their websites and they will be able to help you out. Thank you very much. And I know we don't have much time, so I'm going to open up for more questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tucker. While they are stating their questions, I have some myself. When should students or adolescents consider medication when they have a mental illness?
It is something where you first have to go and ask for professional help. If you have been under stress and you are having a lot of depressive symptoms, you are having some feelings of suicidal thoughts or some feelings of unhappiness, talk to your pediatrician, talk to your parents. Go get and help from professional, and they will help you to guide whether you need medications or not. They'll help you to explain where you should be looking for, what type of treatment would be the best option for you.
Thank you. And then another question is, how can adolescents get help despite stigmatization from parents? So like, let's say they don't want to drive them to the pediatrician because the parents don't believe that the child has a mental illness. What should the child do in this instance?
Talk to your school counselor. That is where you should start with. Once you talk to your school counselor, school is somebody who is where you spend most of your time. So that is the place where they can help you. You always have annual exams, and most of the time, annual exams is when the pediatrician will try to talk to you alone. You fill up those questionnaires and put down on those things that I do believe I have some of these illnesses. And the more you talk about it, it will help your parents to understand what's going on with you. They may still not believe whether the child has depression or anxiety, but I'm pretty sure that they will continue to get and seek help, because at the end of the day, parents want their kids to feel better and be happy.
And then my last question is, what's the threshold for when students should start to seek professional help? What are the signs that they should seek mental or professional help?
If you have been feeling depressed for a long time, your moods are bad, you're feeling very angry, you don't feel happiness in anything, your grades are falling down, you're having an ability to focus. And these symptoms are just not there for 1 or 2 days. They're lasting for a few days or a few weeks. That is the time when you should talk to your parents and talk to your school and talk to your pediatrician to get you the help.
Thank you. I'll now open it up for questions from the audience if they have any.
Sure.
You guys can either put it in the chat or in the Q&A.
Few of the important things to do is making sure if you are feeling something wrong, talk to people, the adults that you trust. And most of the adults will help and at least guide you to go to the places that you need to go.
Deepa asks, where can we go for help besides the counselor, aka like anonymous sources?
One of those things which I talked about on the resources line, you can call any of those places. Once you go to your pediatrician, or you can even call your own insurance companies and ask for saying, hey, we would like to see a therapist or somebody, and they will be able to get you the places. There is also Santa Clara mental health hotline numbers, and I can put it in the chat. And those are the people also can help you get the resources if you really need to get some.
I also had another question, just one final one. With the constant amount of homework and extracurriculars, what are some ways that you recommend for students or young adults to maintain a constant sleeping schedule?
Most important is time management, figuring it out what is going to be important for you and how can you manage some of the things. I always tell my kids to reflect every few weeks of how they are feeling. If they are feeling better or they're feeling overstressed, are they sleeping on the weekends till 1 and 2 because they're trying to catch up on the sleep. Figuring it out what you can stop doing things like if you're going to take 5 AP classes, maybe it would not be a good idea to take 5 AP classes. Maybe it is a good idea to take 4 AP classes and do better than taking 5 AP classes and having stretch. If you're doing 7 extracurricular activities, you have to figure out what really makes you feel passionate about and trying to cut down on the activities that you really feel non-passionate about, or you just like them but you're not that passionate about. Also understanding scheduling, and this is what is very important, scheduling your relaxation time. If you cannot find a time to schedule a relaxation time, that already tells you you are overwhelmed and you are overstressed. So this is the time when you really want to make sure that you are understanding what is going on, what is important and what is not important for you. Talking to your school and your teachers that, hey, I am taking 5 AP classes and that leads to a lot of struggle for me to finish my homework. What can I do during this period of time? And they will be able to help you out during that period of time. And they will be most of the teachers are very kind and they will say, hey, this is the way we can help out, or these are the projects that are very important that you can do. So be open with your teachers to ask those questions.
Thank you.
I do see.
Yeah, we have 3 more questions.
Go ahead, Nathan.
Could you give advice for dealing with college admission stress?
The most important advice would be managing what type of colleges are you taking, understanding what really, don't apply for 30 colleges. That's not going to work out. Figuring it out, okay, what colleges I need to really apply on, which colleges do I really like on, and then dividing the work every day. I always tell kids to say, okay, I'm going to spend an hour or 2 hours depending on what my day looks like on my college things. If I can't do it every day because my everyday life is very stressful, then I try to put it on the weekend. But you have to start early and plan out ahead. Always make sure you're not waiting till your deadline. Give yourself some time of when can you really finish some of the things. Start something in summer that you can do. You don't have to wait till the fall to start applying for colleges. Some of the things you can start working on in your summertime, writing your essays or personal statements, or some of the PQIs are pretty same on those things, and you can work on those things.
Thank you.
Is there ever a time when there is stress?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. We have 2 more questions. Is there ever a time when stress is good, such as motivating for getting a college application done?
Yes, stress is never a bad thing. As I told everybody, stress is important because without the stress, you are not going to feel motivated to do things. However, how much stress are you going to be able to take it is a very individual way to deal with it. When you're feeling very stressed out, it is important to take some time out and take a break. If you have had feeling stressed out about your college application for last 5 days, don't continue working on the things, even if it is on your planner that you have to do this. Take a day or two off and come back to the problem again, and you're going to be able to fix it. So stress is a good thing, but it is going to take some time. It helps the motivation, but it depends on where on your bell curve it is. If it is on a very on your right side of the bell curve, that is not going to help you. And if that is happening, why are you feeling this stress? It's important to recognize where this stress is coming on. Is it the stress of writing personal statement? Is it the stress of feeling that whether you will get into the college or not? And those are the stresses we need to work on and deal with. Some of your positive affirmations and talking to your parents and talking to your counselors and talking to your friends would help.
And then, sorry, we have two more questions, and then we'll move on to the last segment of the symposium. Do you have any tips on how to have a conversation with parents about mental health, especially if they have some kind of stigma against that kind of conversation?
See, most of the parents really want their kids to be happy and do what is going on. It is very important to sit down with your parents and talk about what really are you feeling. Not that they are going to not hear you ever, but they are going to be able to talk about you are feeling stressed and this is what's happening to you. Don't try to talk to them in an angry manner. Try to be calm, try to sit down and say, this is just something that I am facing, and I'm not sure how to go about this situation. And that is where it's going to work out. You really have to have time to sit down with your parents on regular basis to talk about each stresses. Not that they are always there to say, oh, they may or may not validate immediately, but give them time to process some of the feelings that you are feeling, because it's important for the parents to and for you to start having these conversations where you are not upset, where your phones are not ringing, and people will listen to you. Because when you talk to people with not a very strong emotions, everybody is there to help you out.
Perfect. And then the last question, how do you deal with comparing yourself to others?
It's a very strong question, and that is something that you will have to start thinking about. Comparing others is something that we all do as a human, because it's important for us to say, hey, I want to be as good as this person, I want to be as great as that person. And sometimes it's very motivating to do it. If you want to be like a Michael Jordan or Michael Phelps, it is a very motivating situation. However, you also have to understand and recognize the life in real life. There is always somebody who's going to be better than you. You have to figure out what are the goals that you have to manage and where you need to go through. The most important thing is it comes with time. The more and more, if every goal you are comparing yourself is just stressing you out, it's not going to help you to get to that goal. It's a good idea to learn on comparing yourself with your own motivation. Start slow. I was able to do this for next 3 days. Now I'm going to try to do this next 4 days. So compare it to yourself instead of comparing to others in those situations. Find the goals and make the expectations and accomplishments which is going to make better of you and not other people. And that will help you. When you start focusing on yourself, will help you not to feel so compared with other people or other students or other people who are doing better than you, because there is always going to be somebody who's going to do better than you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tucker. Now we're going to move on to the last section of the symposium. Some of the personal counselors at Bellarmine have made some video answers because unfortunately they couldn't make it to the symposium. So now I'm going to share my screen and show the compilation of all these video answers.
Thank you.
I also want to talk a little bit today about how students can check their mental health during online school. The biggest thing I can say is looking at your routines and the structures that you've created, getting up, hygiene, logging on not a minute or two before class starts, What are you doing during your free lunch or career period? What does after school look like? Getting into those routines and those structures of when you're dedicating study hours for homework, as well as getting enough sleep and those healthy habits of a good diet, exercise, and like we talked about, socially connecting with others. So to evaluate your stress and anxiety levels are really those executive functioning skills of time management, organization, planning, and your study skills, and being adaptable and flexible to the circumstances currently. To regulate or analyze a little bit about depression or suicide ideation, that is going to come from a little bit more about how you're functioning daily. Are you isolating and extreme feelings, thoughts of sadness, or also, guys, frustration, irritability, and anger? So if you are having intense feelings that last beyond 2 weeks, that are inhibiting your ability to function daily to meet your personal goals and social goals in your relationships with others, your academic goals, or extracurricular goals and activity engagement, that can be concerning. At that time, if it's lasted longer than 2 weeks, it's important to tell a trusted adult like your parent, myself, or your counselor, to see if maybe we need to talk to a mental health professional to analyze the level of sadness, depression, or suicide ideation. Those are some tips about how to regulate and look at your manage your mental health. Ms. Fasoli is going to give some more detailed information and more from a clinical perspective. But looking at your executive functioning, structure and routines, your connectedness with others, as well as attending to your physical, mental, and spiritual health, and talking to someone if it's inhibiting your daily functioning.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ms. Rolfson, and I'm so happy to be able to be part of your discussion on mental health and wellness. Nathan provided us with some questions that you all came up with, and one of the ones I want to tackle right now is about how does self-perception affect confidence? And I want to tell you a little bit about how to feel more confident. Okay, so it's common for people to rely on achievements and praise from others to have that little boost. Like somebody says, "Oh, you do that well," it feels good, right? But there's a couple of problems with relying on what other people say as the one evaluation of our abilities. So I want you to have a stronger foundation that helps you pick yourself back up if something falls apart. So we have 4 beliefs that I want to talk to you about. The first one is I have inherent worth as a human being. And that is something that is so important for you to grasp, to really hold on to, because each person has dignity and worth, and people deserve to be treated like people. You don't have to earn the ability to live. And if you agree that that's the case, then you must also agree that you are counted amongst those worthy, and that you have inherent worth. The second belief is called failure is a part of life. That's a tough one sometimes, but nobody is born perfect, and we have to learn by our experiences, by things not going well, and then that way we can try them over again and do another round and learn from it. So when we get a little more feedback about our mistakes, it helps us move forward. So keep in mind, failure is not a reflection of your worthiness or of your future. It's just part of the process of getting to feeling successful and confident. Third belief is that others' opinions, good or bad, do not determine the way I feel about myself. Okay, so after one of Oprah Winfrey's first job interviews, they said, "Oh, you're not suitable for TV." And if she had listened to that person and just said, "Oh, okay," and walked away, she would not be where she is now. So when others express an opinion about you, whether it's good, whether it's bad, take a beat. Just notice what you're feeling, what emotions come up, have some breathing space, and then remember that people's opinions about us have a lot more to do with them than it does with you, who you are. Okay, and then the fourth belief that I want you to hold on to is that people do things that benefit them, right? We are in a me first world, and that's normal, but you got to keep it in mind, right? So if your choices are good, your choices are bad. You made a choice and there was a reason behind it. People don't do things randomly and they don't do them for no reason. It's just not human nature. So if you approach life with this belief, you try to understand your own behavior and then other people's. If you trust yourself and you're like, okay, I'm making okay decisions and I know what I'm doing, that's a great thing. So it also gives you that opportunity to think about other people in a different way. So anyway, how do you feel more confident? You internalize these 4 beliefs: that I have inherent worth as a human being, that failure is a part of life, that others' opinions, good or bad, do not determine the way I feel about myself, and that people do things to benefit them. Okay, so you're going to repeat these to yourself. You're going to write them on Post-its. You're going to make lists of evidence that they are true in your life. Record them on the phone and listen to them again and again. So the more strongly you believe in these 4 things, then the more strongly they take hold and the less you have to rely on external praise and accolades to feel confident, right? You feel good about you because you are doing you, not you feel good about you because somebody says, that was great. We like that. That's extra, that's gravy. So keep that up, but you take care of you first, okay? Thanks. Hi guys, this is Ms. Rolfson. I'm so happy to be part of this conversation around how to take care of yourself, how to address mental health needs. Well, one of the questions that I was asked to sort of contemplate and then respond to was, what can students do to maintain a constantly happy environment? Now, first thing is, I have to say that word constantly happy environment, well, constantly is not going to happen. That's not human nature, right? We go up, we go down, you respond to different experiences, but the better you know yourself, the better you can handle those ups and downs. We look for happiness as a balancing act, if you will. Sometimes you got it, sometimes you don't, but it does come back. It's not a one-off. It's not a thing that you'll never experience again if you're having a hard time at any moment. But there's some things that you can do to help yourself feel a little bit better. When you are paying attention to how you feel, you have a better vocabulary and you're better able to respond to your own feelings when you notice them. So paying attention, that self-awareness is super important. You can then find different ways to tackle those things that are causing you some stress or less happiness, and find the practical response in that way. So sometimes distractions are good for helping one cope with difficult times in mental health. So when you're feeling, I'm just not doing anything and I feel blah and I'm not feeling good, that's not a great state to be in. So that low activity, and then on top of that with pandemic and being separated from everyone, that social disconnect really are factors that keep us in that low mood, low motivation, low energy. So you got to feel better by actually taking some action. So I have a long list of healthy distraction activities that you can contemplate. So consider some of these. You could look at mindfulness and meditation resources. You can play trivia games on an app. You can work your way through a list of films. You can do a 7-day happiness challenge. You can learn calligraphy. You can talk to a volunteer listener. You can learn how to play a musical instrument. You could do some mindful coloring. You can listen to a new podcast. You can do a workout video. You can brainstorm ways to save money. You can become experts at recycling. There's all kinds of things that you can do. And if you want, I'd be happy to send you a list of things. And then if you wanted to add to it, oh, that would be even better. But it's nice to kind of remember that there are lots of things that we can do. And our feelings are our feelings. They are a temporary thing. So notice them, let them go by you, and then take action so you can then see, like, what would I need to do to feel better? Have a couple of things that are in your go-to self-care toolbox, things that you already know. I love it when I listen to this song, or I found that every time I talk to this person, I feel a little bit better. Yeah, those kinds of things. So they are in a space where they're reliable and things that you can remember to do when you're not feeling so happy, not feeling so good. And then you should know, counselors are always available. So just reach out, chat, email. Even though we're doing things via video these days, I just want you to know that we care about you and we want to be sure that we're helping you with anything that comes up. All right. Take care, guys. Bye.
Is if a student is feeling depressed, what the student should do about it. I think first of all, just address the word depressed. I think a lot of people throw that term around without actually considering what that means. So some people might say, oh my gosh, I'm feeling depressed today, but they're just really feeling kind of down or just kind of blah. And if that's the case, then I think you can employ all of the things that you typically do. So that might mean going outside, or it might mean just engaging in a conversation with a friend or whatnot. But if you're actually depressed, that looks a little different. It means that it's affecting your sleep, possibly. Maybe you're sleeping more or you're sleeping less because you can't really go to sleep because you're just feeling so down and so helpless. Then it could be impacting your appetite too. Some people who are actually feeling really depressed, they can't eat, or they're eating less or eating a lot more because they're feeling so overwhelmed and so down and so helpless, and just it's impacting them that way. So there's the biological function piece. Or it might even be impacting their focus, their concentration. Like they cannot focus, they have low motivation. They're like, what's the point in that? So there's that piece as well. So if you are experiencing any of what I'm talking about for a period of, more than a couple of days, like a week or 2 weeks consistently, yeah, then definitely I suggest that you talk to your personal counselor. Reach out and say, hey, I'm not feeling so great. Like I want to, or maybe you don't want to share that via, email. Maybe you just reach out and say, hey, I need to schedule a meeting with you. I want to talk to you. We're here for you. That's why we're here. We're here to support you because we want to make sure that you're feeling confident, that you're feeling happy. This is a hard time for everyone. No one anticipated a pandemic right now, so this is an extra stressor for a lot of people. So please reach out to your personal counselor via text, or the Teams chat, or via email. Reach out to a friend, maybe someone who will be supportive. Reach out to another adult that you trust. Maybe it's an aunt or an uncle, maybe it's your parent, who knows? Someone that will really support you during that time. Know that you're not alone either. This is hard, and depression definitely impacts a lot of teens and a lot of young adults. So you're not alone. It might feel awful and it might feel isolating. So I want you to know that you're not alone, and we're here to help. So and then of course it's hard to get motivated, and it's hard to, people say, oh, go exercise, or, go connect with a friend. And if you're really feeling depressed, chances are you don't have the motivation to do that. So reach out to an adult first, and then we can help you get back on track. Okay. All right. Thanks all. Hi, everyone. My name is Mrs. Fasoli, and I'm here to answer the question, if students are feeling suicidal or have suicidal thoughts, what should they do about it? First of all, I want to acknowledge the pain and the suffering that someone who is experiencing suicidal thoughts is experiencing. They're experiencing so much overwhelm and so much pain that they're at a point where they're thinking of killing themselves because it's so much to bear. It also probably means that they feel like they're alone. Loneliness is one of the most dangerous feelings that someone could ever have. So if you know someone who is having some suicidal thoughts, I want you to know that there are people to support you. There are people who dedicate their lives to it. There are suicide and crisis hotlines. I put up at the top, the other side, 741-741. If you text that, and you text START, START, to that number, a crisis counselor will respond if you don't feel like calling a particular number. I definitely recommend to reach out to someone. Maybe it's someone who doesn't really know you if you feel more comfortable, or it's someone that does know you if you prefer that. Definitely reach out. If you're at a point where you're planning to kill yourself, or it's more escalated, please reach out. There is someone there that in your life that you may not realize that cares so deeply about you. And it might not feel like it in the moment, but they do. So just think about it. I know it's hard to think in the muck and the murkiness of what's happening right now. So I'm not going to advise you to, go out and get exercise, even though that is great, or to go connect with a friend, or to do all these things, because my guess is that if you're at a point where you're thinking about suicide, you've tried all those things. So please reach out to an adult. Please reach out to your personal counselor. Please reach out to a crisis hotline or crisis text line, because we are here to help. Absolutely. One other thing that I will say, there is a phrase that is basically I forgot the actual phrase, but it's basically like do the opposite action is basically the phrase. And it's basically like when you're at a point where you're so severely depressed that you're thinking about killing yourself, do the opposite action in the sense of, if you feel like isolating yourself and it's not good for you, but you feel like doing that, reach out, challenge yourself to reach out to someone then. If you are so depressed and so like suicidal to the point that you're like, I don't want to go to class, or I don't want to go outside for a minute, challenge yourself, just do it, even though it's so really just incredibly difficult. I'm gonna stop because I can talk a lot longer about this, but talk about it. Talk about your suicidal thoughts, please, with someone. There's so much shame in that, and I really want to just strip away the shame. I really think that talking about it is so helpful, just to get it out and open and talk about why you're feeling that way. All right, I'm gonna stop now. Thank you.
All right. Sorry. On that note, I believe we can end the symposium. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. If you would like to help out a little bit more with suicide prevention and the people behind the number 741-741, there is a link that you can donate to. I've posted it in the chat, and I've posted it in the chat if you would like to donate. But if not, thank you so much for coming, and we really appreciate it. Hopefully you guys learned a lot of good information from this meeting. So on that note, thank you so much, and we'll end it here. Bye, everybody.